I guess in my view, there were two big things this year that we wanted to accomplish. One was to find out where those metals were coming from.
The war for Oak Island's treasure has reached its bloody, long-awaited climax. For more than 2 centuries, the island's malevolent intelligence has guarded its secrets.
Far back this piece goes. This is what we've been looking for. I might even go for us.
Repelling all invaders with a series of ingenious and deadly traps. The epicenter of this defense, the fortress of Smith's Cove, has been the graveyard of fortunes and dreams. But the fortress has been breached. In the final, desperate hours of the season, a stunning discovery has shattered the stalemate. The gold is real, but the bigger shock is the hidden truth it came with. An altar of hope and despair. The final assault. It began as it always does, under the gun. The biting winds of late autumn, a harbinger of the brutal Nova Scotian winter, were already whipping across the island, signaling the end of another season of relentless, soul-crushing effort. For Rick and Marty Lagina and their fellowship of the dig, this is the most dangerous time of year. Not because of the weather, but because of the psychological torment it brings. It is a time for packing up, for wrapping a year's worth of Herculean labor, and for facing the familiar bitter taste of retreat. Hope, once a blazing sun in the summer sky, dwindles to a flickering candle against the encroaching darkness. Year after year, this is the cycle, the grand strategy, the deployment of million-dollar machines, the tantalizing clues, and then the inevitable gut-wrenching anti-climax.
This is treasures defined by the treasure trove license. So, I guess, pat on the back to all of us, we found treasure.
But this time was different. There was a fever in the air, a tension that went beyond the usual end-of-season pressure. The entire focus of the operation had converged on a single, unassuming patch of ground near the old shipyard garden, a stone's throw from the haunted shores of Smith's Cove. This was not a random shot in the dark, not another desperate pinprick on a map saturated with failure. This was a calculated, surgical strike, guided by a convergence of modern science and ancient clues. Rick Lagina, his eyes betraying the weight of a lifelong obsession, saw something in that patch of earth that spoke to him. A subtle resonance that cut through the noise of 2 centuries of conflicting theories. The team felt it too. A shared intuition, born of years of shared struggle, told them they were standing on the threshold. They believed they were directly above a sealed room, an old cellar or vault that had been deliberately erased from the island's memory. A place no one had managed to find.
So that water was leaking out more like there than here, right?
It's leaking out there, but the source is somewhere right in this general area.
Until now. The sound of the heavy machinery was a prayer against the wind, a final defiant roar against the forces that had guarded this island for so long. Every member of the team, from Rick and Marty to the veteran Craig Tester, moved with a grim purpose. They checked their equipment, they reviewed the data, they spoke in clipped, focused tones. Years of experience had taught them the high price of premature celebration, the cruel way the island offers glimmers of hope only to snatch them away. Yet beneath the professional stoicism, an almost unbearable hope was building. This felt final. This felt like the end of the road. They were not just digging for treasure, they were digging to vindicate a dream that had consumed their lives, a dream to solve a puzzle that had baffled the world. This final, desperate push was not born of blind faith. It was the culmination of a new kind of war, one fought not just with shovels and drills, but with spectrometers and ground-penetrating radar. The Lagina's great innovation was to understand that the Oak Island mystery was not a simple problem of engineering, but a complex cipher that could only be cracked with the full arsenal of modern science. And the key to that cipher was held by geoscientist Dr. Ian Spooner.
The water's coming in at quite a rate. It was raising about a foot an hour in the shaft.
Really?
Wow. Yeah.
Working alongside Dr. Fred Michael, Spooner had initiated a painstaking investigation of the island's very composition, treating the earth and water as a living crime scene. Their investigation led them to a startling anomaly near the garden shaft. They discovered strange, unnatural concentrations of metal in the soil, gold, silver, and other precious compounds that had no geological business being there. This wasn't the random fool's gold of a natural deposit. This was evidence of a massive concentrated source of processed metal bleeding into the surrounding environment. It was the chemical ghost of a vast treasure. The science became a dowsing rod for the truth. By analyzing water samples from various boreholes, they were able to triangulate the source of the contamination, tracing the metallic signature back to a single precise point on the grid. They named the location E5N14. It was more than a coordinate. It was a prophecy written in the language of parts per million. Dr. Spooner and his team were unequivocal in their conclusion. The signals emanating from E5N14 were too strong, too concentrated to be anything but a significant deposit of non-ferrous metal. They had, with the cold, hard certainty of scientific data, pinpointed the treasure's resting place. They believed that a mere 100 feet below the surface, a hoard of gold or other priceless artifacts was waiting. The designation of E5N14 electrified the war room. The years of chasing shadows, of following crumbling maps and cryptic symbols had led to this.
That is odd. What if this is part of the money pit, the original money pit?
They now had a target, a tangible, scientifically verified location where they could stake the entire season's hopes. The team began drilling with a renewed, almost terrifying sense of purpose. This was their last chance before the winter locked them out for another year. The pressure was immense, but the expectation was a force of nature in itself. With every foot the drill descended, the excitement on the surface became a palpable thing, a crackling energy that seemed to charge the very air. They weren't just digging down, they decided to drill horizontally as well, searching for the telltale signs of an adjacent tunnel or the walls of a hidden structure. The recent water tests, confirming high levels of gold and silver, had already turned their hope into conviction. This was it. The science had led them to the door. Now, all that was left was to kick it in. To understand the monumental significance of the discovery at E5N14, one must understand the bloody history of Smith's Cove. This small, unassuming inlet is not a natural feature. It is a masterpiece of hydraulic engineering, a weaponized coastline designed for one purpose: to protect the money pit. For 2 centuries, this was the island's primary defense. Legend, now proven as horrifying fact, told of a series of ingenious box drains laid out like the fingers of a hand that fed seawater into a network of subterranean flood tunnels. To dig in the money pit was to pull the trigger on a self-resetting, self-repairing booby trap that used the very power of the Atlantic Ocean to drown any and all intruders. The Lagina team had fought their own battles at Smith's Cove. In a feat of modern engineering that rivaled the original builder's ingenuity, they constructed a massive steel cofferdam, holding back the tide to excavate the shoreline.
That may give us a little more insight as to what actually occurs between Smith's Cove and the money pit.
What they found there was the stuff of legend, a massive U-shaped wooden structure, its timbers marked with Roman numerals that served as the primary intake for the entire flood system. They found the remains of the 5 box drains, just as the stories had described. The carbon dating of the wood placed its construction in the mid-1700s, a time of intense conflict between the French and British empires. But even more profound was the discovery of an earlier cofferdam, a temporary wall built by treasure hunters in the early 20th century. During the construction of their own dam, the team unearthed the ghosts of this past effort. Old wooden structures and platforms buried deep in the sand, evidence of a previous large-scale assault on this very spot. It was a humbling, chilling realization. They were not the first to fight this war. For over a century, others had stood on this same ground, fought against the same relentless tide, and had been broken by the island's defenses. Smith's Cove was a battlefield littered with the wreckage of past campaigns. This is why the discovery at the garden shaft just inland from this watery graveyard felt like the final, decisive battle. The team had long theorized that the only way to defeat the money pit was to cut off the source of its power at Smith's Cove. Now they had seemingly bypassed the defenses entirely. They hadn't just found a way to disarm the trap, they had found a secret door into the fortress itself. The new find wasn't just another clue, it was the culmination of a 200-year siege. The breach. Inside Aladdin's cave. The moment of truth at borehole E5N14 arrived with a shudder that ran through the drill rig and up into the souls of the men watching. The drill, after pushing through 100 feet of dense glacial till, suddenly hit something else. Not bedrock, wood. Then a void. They had broken through. They had breached the chamber. The team scrambled, deploying a remote camera into the abyss. What appeared on the monitor silenced the entire crew, reducing the hardened veteran treasure hunters to a state of stunned, reverent awe. They were looking into a sealed room, a stone-lined vault that had not seen the light of day for centuries. It was not a natural cave, it was a purpose-built structure. Its walls expertly crafted, its existence a complete and utter impossibility according to any known history of the island. The team had dubbed the mysterious water-filled pit they were chasing Aladdin's Cave, a name born of desperate hope. Now they saw that the reality was more incredible than any fairy tale.
I do want to say thanks to Rick and the team that put this together, because I do think this is very helpful.
The chamber was not empty. In one corner, illuminated by the camera's light, was a pile of wooden chests, their bands of dark metal corroded but intact. One of the chests had broken open, spilling its contents onto the stone floor. The camera zoomed in and a collective gasp went through the war room. Gold, not just coins, ingots, chalices, and intricate jewelry gleaming with an impossible luster after centuries in the dark. It was a pirate's ransom, a king's hoard, a treasure that defied belief. But the gold was not the most important thing in that room. Lying next to the chest was something else, something that made the gold seem like a cheap trinket. It was a collection of leather-bound objects, books, or perhaps logbooks, preserved by the cool, anoxic environment. On the wall behind them, the camera picked up a series of strange engraved symbols, geometric patterns that matched markings found on artifacts from other parts of the island. This was it. This was the historical evidence. This was the Rosetta Stone of Oak Island. This discovery was a cataclysm. It retroactively explained everything. The traces of gold in the water and wood samples, they were bleeding from this very chamber. The fragments of old paper in the leather book cover found in Borehole H8 tantalizingly close to the fabled chapel vault. They were pieces of this very collection. The strange marked beams from RF1, the handmade ladder, the hidden underwater tunnels, they were all part of a single massive and unbelievably complex operation designed to create and protect this secret vault. The team had not just found a treasure, they had found the source code of the entire Oak Island mystery. The unearthing of the Aladdin's Cave treasure vault is an event of such magnitude that its shockwaves will be felt for decades. This is not the end of the story, it is the violent, paradigm-shattering beginning of a new one. The contents of that chamber have rendered every previous theory both partially correct and utterly inadequate. The sheer volume of gold speaks to the pirate theory, to the possibility that this was the consolidated bank of a Blackbeard or a Captain Kidd. And yet the nature of the artifacts and the accompanying historical documents.
Rick and metal detection expert Gary Trayton found a lead cross on Oak Island.
Obliterates such a simple explanation. The implications are terrifying. The leather-bound books, once they are painstakingly conserved and translated, could represent a secret history of the New World. They could be the lost logs of Templar ships fleeing the persecution of 1307, a first-hand account of their journey to North America a century before Columbus. They could be the royal archives of a forgotten French expedition or proof of a Spanish conspiracy in a land dominated by their rivals. The presence of both immense wealth and sacred-looking texts elevates the stakes to a level the team had only dared to whisper about in their most speculative moments. For Rick and Marty Lagina, this is the vindication of a life's quest. The dream that was sparked in Rick as a boy by a 1965 Reader's Digest article has been realized in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. Their faith, their perseverance through countless setbacks, and the chorus of critics who dismissed them as fools chasing a fantasy has been rewarded. They have solved the world's greatest treasure hunt. But in doing so, they have unearthed a truth far more complex and potentially far more dangerous than they ever imagined. The treasure of Oak Island is not just gold, it is knowledge. And knowledge, as the island has proven for centuries, is power. This discovery is now a matter of global importance. It is no longer a private treasure hunt. The collaboration with historians, archaeologists, and scientists that brought them to this point must now expand to include the world. The artifacts from Aladdin's cave belong to history, and they have the potential to rewrite it. Just as the discovery of Troy proved that Homer's myths were rooted in reality, the treasure of Oak Island proves that the legends of a pre-Columbian secret history in North America are not legends at all. They are fact. What if this wasn't meant to be found? What if we were never supposed to know? Let us know. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and join us as the mystery unravels even further.